Hello, everyone. Today we are looking at the Science and Technology Engineering Standards examined by the North Carolina General Education Test for elementary education candidates. So these are your science standards for your North Carolina General Education Test. We're going to look at the first one. I'm going to share my screen so you can see what I'm talking about. All right, so we're looking at 10A, which says, identify the basic characteristics and needs of living things. Examples look at the growth, the reproduction, the life cycles of common organisms. So your concepts are growth, reproduction, cause and effect, systems, and change. Okay, you need to know the characteristics and needs of living things. So first you need to determine the unique characteristics of living things. You need to know the needs of living things, what they need to survive. Your skills are going to be identify the characteristics and needs of living things. So your targeted cognitive process is to identify. Okay, so the steps you need to take to be successful with this standard is to just research about living things. Okay, then you're going to determine the characteristics of each living thing. Okay, what's unique, what's specific for them. Okay, and then you need to know the needs for living things. Okay, what are the basic needs? Okay, so look at that. Then let's look at two of these resources. I have three resources here, but we're going to look at these two. So they put items into two sections. They're either living or non-living. Okay, and to determine if a thing is living, if it is a living thing, they determine this with the 7 characteristics of living things. This can also be called life processes. So most scientists use 7 life processes or characteristics to determine whether something is living or non-living. Okay, so this is one of our resources, and there is the first life process or characteristics scientists use to determine if it is a living thing is movement. Does it move? Okay, all living things move in some way. This may be obvious, such as animals walking, or less obvious, such as plants that have parts that move to track the movement of the sun. So movement is your first one. Okay, this is a characteristic. Respiration is the second one. Respiration is a chemical reaction that happens within cells to release energy from food. So that's the second one. The third one is sensitivity, the ability to detect changes in the surrounding environment. Okay, so we have movement, respiration, sensitivity. Now we have growth. All living things grow. Remember, we saw that in our standard, growth, right? So growth, all living things grow. We can use earthworms as an example. Earthworms hatch from an egg and they can grow into a tree or more in length. Some earthworms are also able to regrow small parts of their body that have been lost or injured. Okay, so growth. The fifth one is reproduction. We saw that in our standard. The ability to reproduce and pass genetic information onto the offspring. So they're having more of what they are. So deers will have more deers. Earthworms are having more earthworms. It's reproduction. It's the cycle of life. So make sure you know about that. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. 6 is excretion, is getting rid of waste. Okay, so if you're a living thing, you get rid of waste. And the last one, the 7th characteristic or life process, and as said in this resource, is nutrition. The intake and use of nutrients. This occurs in very different ways in different kinds of living things. So you might want to know the different ways that this occurs in different living things. So this would need to be researched even more to make sure you're totally aware of this standard and successful with this standard. Okay. These are other ways to classify living things, such as bacteria, protozoas, chromatids, fungi, plants, animals. And there's the earthworm that we're talking about in this specific example. Now, our next resource is the needs. So needs was also part of our standard. You need to know the needs of living things. So the basic needs of living things are, these are the 5 basic needs: sunlight, food, water, and air. And it breaks it down, and temperature. And it breaks it down a little more down here. So sunlight is the most important need of living things because it is the source of energy and it gives heat to plants and animals. Water is the medium in which living cells and tissues work. Water is also a living environment for many plants and animals. Air is the second most important because animals would not be alive without air. They cannot survive. Is one of the most important. Food, living things need energy to function, so food and nutrients also give energy to the living thing. And also, energy is needed to grow, reproduce, move, and to work. So, in order for growth and reproduction to work, living things need their nutrients and need their food. So, you kind of see how all these things work together. Everything affects each other and it affects the processes. Okay. It needs all parts of this for the living thing to be alive and to be able to function. And it needs a habitat with the right temperature. Okay. So again, the 5 basic needs are sunlight, food, water, air, temperature. Okay. So there's that. And that was our first standard 10A. Okay. And there's our standard.